Okay, let's start at the beginning. So I started at a company called INJOZI. INJOZI is a technology studio. We specialize in platform development and gaming and gamification. So we've built I think we're at 47 games now. And then that business needed music for the games, right, that we're building. And I was like, well, I'm a musician, so let me give that a go. And Audio Militia currently is probably the biggest audio post-production facility on the continent, we reckon. And then INJOZI created something in 2016 called GotBot.AI, which is basically agnostic chatbot building platforms.
Every once in a while, a creative emerges who can seamlessly navigate across diverse disciplines. And Nick Argyros is one of those rare talents, from iconic sound design and leading a technology studio to designing games and drumming for some of the hottest bands. Nick's versatility just knows no bounds. Whether innovating with AI or building a venture capital firm that has already invested in 12 startups, join us as we go inside the world of one of the most unique creative entrepreneurs.
Amazing. Thank you for making time, bro.
Awesome, man.
Really appreciate it. I know you've got so many different things going on, and I think a place I really love to start, you know, especially with people who do so many things. I always love to know if you at some sort of a dinner party and your wife, you know, has invited you to some sort of dinner party, and there's some people you don't know, and someone asks you what do you do for a living? I always love to know people's answer. How do you answer that question?
Yeah, it's a little bit of a tough one sometimes, but and I hate saying it, but I always do tell people that I'm an entrepreneur, because I do think that's what I am at heart.
Absolutely.
And then I just tell them that I'm involved in kind of different sectors, but mainly in technology and music. And I kind of leave it at that. And then if they ask more, then I'll break it down for them in
a little bit
more detail.
Okay,
got it. Okay, so what do I do now? So I've got, okay, let's start at the beginning. So I started at a company called INJOZI. INJOZI is a technology studio. We specialize in platform development and gaming and gamification. So we've built I think we're at 47 games now.
Crazy.
And for mainly big corporates and stuff. So it's quite interesting. So it's anything from a Need for Speed to a Tamagotchi game to we've just done something for Aware where we're simulating drunk driving, all of that type of stuff, you know. So we do all of that. And then that business needed music for the games, right, that we're building. And I was like, well, I'm a musician, so let me give that a go. And then it started as something called Audio Boutique, and Audio Boutique then grew into something called Audio Militia. And Audio Militia currently is probably the biggest audio post-production facility on the continent, we reckon, and possibly in the Southern Hemisphere. We don't know yet, but that's an interesting group of people. We've got a music psychologist.
Yes.
We've got Catherine Grenfell there that has done musicology. We've got engineers. We've got sound designers. We've got technologists, all of this type of stuff all rolled into one. And we write music, mix it. We work with artists. We do AI and audio, all of that type of stuff.
Crazy.
And then INJOZI created something in 2016 called GotBot.AI, which is basically agnostic chatbot building platform. So it means that you can create a bot using NLP, which is natural language processing, or large language models, or a form editor. And then you can basically deploy that onto WhatsApp, Instagram, Facebook Messenger, web chat, SMS, kind of wherever you want it.
Crazy.
So yeah, that's a very short version of it.
You know what's funny? I think we met at a dinner party and you gave me that.
Yeah, that's exactly it. We met with the Lon. Yes,
100%.
We worked. What was that movie called? It was Shaft 6 that we were working on with Delon.
Crazy.
Mannequin Pictures. That's it.
Crazy.
Yeah.
I love that.
True.
So look, I think I'd love to sort of start at the beginning, right? Just to get to understand your early context. So if you could tell me, if we were listening to your audiobook, maybe at the later part in your career, where would your story begin? And feel free to go as far back, or, you know, into maybe a little bit about your family and parents.
Sure.
But pretty much if we're watching the movie of your life on Netflix, what's that opening scene, you know?
Cool. It's going to be like a small town, 80 k's out of Joburg, called Vereniging. It would open up on a dusty kind of morning, steel factories.
I love it.
And there's a little Greek family, you know, in this little kind of town. So interesting stories that my grandfather came to South Africa, you know, after World War II. And he rocked up here, couldn't speak, probably like your parents, as was immigrants, arrived here, couldn't speak the language, couldn't speak Afrikaans or English or converse in any way. And, when he arrived, you know, what you'll see is a lot of Greek communities, and possibly even Italian and Armenian and Portuguese. All of these kind of communities are all based in these weird little towns because as Greeks, I'll speak from our point of view, is you weren't actually allowed in the major metros. That's why they're out there, because, you know, my grandfather arrived and he was ticked off as black.
Gotcha.
So they weren't allowed in the metros. So, and then things changed, obviously, through the apartheid kind of times and so on. And then at some point, he kind of qualified as white at some point, but he was still based out in Vereniging. And I mean, when we were there, growing up in the 80s, I mean, there were 11,000 people in that like greater area. So it just shows how many Europeans were there because they weren't allowed in Joburg, right? So I grew up in a very, very small town, a steel manufacturing town, and went to a tiny little school called Arkham Park, and I just loved sports, man. I was like obsessed. Can we swear on this?
Go crazy.
Yeah, I'm going to say it. We were sports before, you know. It was anything to play: football, karate, rugby, all of that type of stuff. And my parents met there, and by the time I was 13 years old, my sister got into medical school, my older sister. So she came up to WITS and then was staying in town in a flat, us still being over there. And then my other older sister got into National School of Arts, and then I got in. And the way I got in is I had no interest in going to art school.
Really?
Yeah. My mother, being an artist, was like, no, you've got talents, go and do X, Y, and Z. And she was the one.
She painted?
She sculpts, she paints, beautiful miniatures, beautiful oils, things like that. So I got a little bit of an artistic background, even though all I wanted to do was sports, man.
Crazy.
That was it. And I was actually pretty good at sports. I mean, I got my provincial colors in football and karate and tennis. So I was like very like into it. So you can imagine I had no inkling to go into anything kind of creative. Yeah. And it was my mom that was like, cool, your sister's going to art school. She's talented, and so should you. Yeah. And
it's in your blood.
Off you go. You know? So me and both my siblings basically moved to Joburg. Yeah. Me and my little sister were in art school together at boarding school, right? And then my sister was here, and then my parents were like, man, there's 3 of our kids here. We got 4 of them. And 3 of them are in Joburg. So then my parents decided to eventually move to Johannesburg when I was about 14.
Got you.
Yeah. Got you. And then it was just wild in Joburg because my parents took in another 3 children while we were up here.
Oh, crazy.
So we were 7 kids at a point. Yeah. Yeah. Because when my mom came from Greece to South Africa, you know, they were so dirt poor, after the wars and stuff, that when they arrived or when they left, they actually took a young girl with, you know, her family took in this young girl and brought her to South Africa because they couldn't even feed her. Crazy, it was so poor, you know, like everything had been destroyed. So they came over, and that lady basically ended up becoming my brother's godmother. And shame, she was sadly, she was killed basically in her she had a bakery, and after she passed away, my mom decided to take in her daughter.
Gotcha.
So that was one of the children, and then there were other 2 godchildren that my parents took in and basically put through high school and college.
Incredible.
Yeah,
man.
so it was wild, dude. 7 kids in one house.
And did you end up studying after?
Yeah, that was cool. Some of the great kind of like pieces of advice my dad gave me, he was like, listen, we're in a lucky position where I get to pay for you to go to college. So what do you want to study? So I said, I'm interested in industrial design and jewelry design and, anything design wise that I could like was actually tangible, not on a computer or anything like that. And I eventually went with jewelry design and then ended up doing industrial design after that.
Gotcha.
So that was like my...
Is that something you caught sort of in
art school?
In art school?
Yeah,
okay.
Definitely.
How did it catch you? What did you come across? Or
I mean, it was like, like being young and stuff, like my mom used to go nuts because they'd buy me like a scale electric set and then I'd take the whole thing apart and rebuild it into something else that would move and give me light and all of this stuff. So they obviously saw that I really liked, making things or being kind of creative in that sense. And then at art school, can you believe I actually did jewelry? And then I was like, wow, I can actually like build and make things. And then when I went to college and did jewelry, then I started using this program called Rhino, which is like a 3D kind of program. And then it was quite weird because the dean actually came to me and said, dude, you shouldn't be doing this. You need to go into industrial design. And jewelry's no good for you kind of thing. You need to head that way. And then I was watching or designing watches or what ended up happening is a friend of mine's father owned Trek, the bicycle company in South Africa, and a guy called Leon Retief, and basically walked in and the greatest brief ever. He took a bicycle pump, walked in and said, you see this? I was like, yeah. He just took it and like smashed it on the floor, broke into pieces. He's like, I can't have that happen. So fix it kind of thing. Wow. And I started designing bicycle pumps, smart tools, all of that type of stuff. So it was
crazy. So
it was really cool.
Like, incredible. And so you went to go study then industrial design.
I went to WITS.
Amazing.
And at WITS, I met pretty much the team I still work with today. We're all college buddies.
That's insane, bro. Seriously.
Yeah. So I met Ross Garrett, insanely talented photographer. Go and check him out. He's amazing. But he had, when, people used to dye their tips, frosted tips, that's what it's called. I turned around and looked at him. I was like, hey, this guy looks interesting. And we got talking and we've been, friends ever since. We're business partners. I met Craig Wells through that as well. He's still my business partner today. And a guy called Chris Green as well. That we were business partners for 16 years.
Got you.
Yeah.
So when does music sort of creep into your life? Is this sort of later?
Very late.
Much later. Okay.
Yeah. So I go to this art school and I'm doing art and sculpture and all this type of stuff. And I'm in a hostel and someone rocks up and plays Rage Against the Machine.
Yes.
And my mind literally warps.
Crazy.
It breaks.
Wow.
I've never heard music like this. And then I go to my friend Jonathan Chorn's 16th birthday and they play Nirvana and my mind warps again.
Yeah.
And it's all this kind of, you're a teenager, right? So there's all this angst and you're angry. And then, and then I just went into this entire like political thing, Rage Against the Machine and being in the country and my parents telling me these stories. I was just fueled by like, not a hatred, but just like, I just want to know what's going on.
Yes.
And through Rage Against the Machine, started understanding, politics from the Zapatista movement in Mexico and how America has manipulated so many things through war. And then looking at our political standing as a country, and then growing up with someone like George Bezos, who was my aunt's best friend. She had the coffee shop down near, the courts there in Joburg CBD. So we used to chat to him and, he'd tell me, go and read this and look at that. And, then you read the Bang Bang Club and then you start realizing that there's so much more to everything, and that the media
Absolutely.
is a facade, and you've got to dig deeper to understand like the truths behind all of it.
Yes.
And I think Rage Against the Machine was a massive kind of push for me there.
Wow.
So it literally warped my mind. And then by the time I turned 17, and I was in school, I said to my dad, dude, I showed him all of this Rage Against the Machine stuff. And the amazing thing about my father was, and let me put it to you like this, okay? My brother's a CA.
Yes.
My sister's a doctor. My other sister's a jewelry designer.
Yes.
And then there's me, right? Who's like into metal and all of this stuff. And when I show my dad all this Rage Against the Machine and Slipknot stuff eventually, he just says to me, oh, my boy, that's nice. They got lots of energy.
Yes.
He didn't comment about anything else. And I say to him, Dad, I want drums. And my dad told me later that he actually wanted to play drums.
Crazy.
And because it was obviously quite conservative and all the way back then, his dad was like, there's no ways you're playing drums. You're going to become an architect and all of this stuff, which he didn't want to do. So in the end, I go with my father and he buys me a 2,000 Rand Thunder kit. It's like this scrapper, eh?
Yeah.
But it might as well have been a DW. I just
100%.
didn't care. And then I just started watching on VHS the Nirvana and Nitro concerts, and
Crazy.
I'd literally watch what Dave Grohl was doing, and then I'd run to my room and just try and replicate it.
Wow.
Wow. And that's how I learned. Pretty much.
Incredible, man. Incredible.
That was the first kind of view into music. But National School of Arts had very talented people, but they did classical music.
Yes.
They were violins and cellos and piano and xylophones and all of these things. So I was surrounded by it. And then when they'd perform at school, I was just like, wow, I want to do this. And then in my standard 9, I'm giving away my age now. So what's that? What is that? Grade 11. What is that?
Yeah,
grade 11. Yeah. They introduced something called the Contemporary Music course at National School of Arts. And that meant that you could now do jazz, rock, all of these other things. And that was the inception of all these other kind of music schools and so on. And it originated from National School of Arts.
Incredible, man.
Yeah.
Wow, I didn't know that. And after school, bro, so once you're done with industrial design, do you go work in that sort of field?
So I actually ended up going and working for Trek and Ravex.
Yes. Okay, yes, that's where you were building
Yes. So I ended up doing that. And then at a point, I realized I don't dig this.
Wow.
Because I was alone.
Yes.
I was, you sit in your design alone, and there's not really that much interaction and so on. Once the product's designed, it goes and gets machined in China and comes back as a full kind of working product. You test it, make tweaks, and that goes 100%. Back and forth. But you're not really engaging in anyone with anyone. Yeah. And then the way it all happened, kind of getting into music. As soon as I learned to play a groove, I got into a band with my best friend at the time, a guy called Ernest Suarez.
Yes.
Ernesto dos Santos Suarez is his full name. And then a guy called Greg Russell, better known as Gump. Yes. And he was a guitarist in Pestroy in the end. And we started playing together and doing all of that. And through starting to play, I realized that I loved it so much that I actually want to change my trajectory completely.
Wow.
And ended up selling all my gear, and then bought musical gear.
Crazy.
In the end. So I just sold all my stuff and bought musical gear for a studio because I was so blown away by music. It was just became everything to me.
Yeah.
And I remember I started with a band called Head Up, and that became 16 Stitch.
Got you.
Yeah, so we changed the name and kind of reformatted, and I was brutal about it. I was like, guys, our artwork needs to be the best. We write the best songs, and they were so amazing. And the way I met them was through Shane Forbes from Pestroy as well.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, at his 21st.
That's incredible, bro. And seriously, you guys go that far back?
That far back, yeah. So we were at the party, and Andrew Maskell, so Shane introduces us, and I've got Andrew, Paul, and Gareth with me, and we're all chatting about music, what we like and don't like, and all of that. And I remember Andrew singing the melody from a song called Bovril, worst name ever, but we all know. And I was like, wow, that's a great melody. And then they tell the story better, but anyway, they came to my house. And they just saw my drum kit, and it was like, polished, clean. And I had this massive rack and all of these like toms and cymbals. I don't even think they cared how well I could play. They were just like, this dude's got the greatest kits ever, And that was it. Do
you want to be in our band?
That was it.
Play. Like,
dude, then what ends up happening, they don't tell me, but their drummer's gone on a little holiday to England.
Oh, crazy.
I didn't know this. So we're jamming, my kit's there, all of this type of stuff. And their drummer rocks up at brand practice while I'm there, and I don't know. So I'm like the side chick, right?
Okay, the side, got you.
And so I see all of their faces go like white, and they're like, "Oh shit, let's go outside and speak to this dude." I'm like, "What's going on?" And eventually I go outside, and they like actually introduce us. And Jeff and I are still friends to today. Wow. I had a meeting with him last week, man. So we've just all stayed like kind of so close,
Incredible.
And he's a great guy as always. He's done incredibly well.
Incredible. So like, where does your journey, at what point does the first sort of step of this entrepreneurship, and like, how does that sort of mold and become a sort of path? I mean, I'm sure you pick up from music that like you love the camaraderie of being in a band and people collaborating, working together, working in the same room. How does that sort of start the entrepreneurship? Is there other companies you work at, or is there a certain point in your life where you take that leap?
So being Greek, right? You're I think you're bred in a way to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah, 100%.
And the reason I say that is I work for myself. Both my sisters work for themselves, and my brother does.
Incredible.
So all four of us do it. So my dad was an entrepreneur, and his father was an entrepreneur. So therefore we are entrepreneurs, right? So from small, even like one of the greatest lessons I have is like my dad has a butchery, and I get to pack bones in the beginning, right? And it's such a shit job, and I hate it. And then I like kind of scale from that to go and now take the tannies meat to a car, in the box and all of that. And then I learn, I can get tipped for all of that. So you're like bred for all of this stuff. But to answer your question, I started in 16 Stitch. And before then, I've been doing like murals and things like that, and working as an industrial designer, jewelry designer, all of this stuff. And then we start with a band, and 13 shows in, we get signed by Authentic Ideas, and then our label becomes Sony BMG. And then we need artwork.
Yes.
And I need to put this whole thing together. And they're like, cool, do you have an album? And I'm like, yes. And we don't. We got 7 songs. We need to write at least another 5. And we've got stuff in the bag, but now we really need to write it and record it and get it out. And through that, I sit around and I go like, okay, so now what? So I phone Ross, who I went to college with. And I say to him, dude, we've just been signed. I need to put this whole thing together. So he then says, cool, I'll help you. And Craig's there as well, Craig Wells. And we design our first album, and it's called Beautiful Angelic Parasite.
Still a good, it is still a good title, man.
I think so.
Yeah, still a good title. That's wrong.
Exactly. So we do all the artwork and stuff, and then afterwards, I look at the guys and I'm like, I really enjoyed that. I know it was our own stuff. I really enjoyed that. I'm wondering if I could like join you guys, because they have this company called INJOZI.
Yes.
So that kind of bites is doing the album artwork. And they're like, well, Nick, we really dig you, but what are you going to do? And I quickly realized that they are super talented, but they can't speak. They can't talk, they can't sell, they can't do any of that stuff. And I'm quite a like fairly methodical and pragmatic guy and so on. So I come in and I start becoming like the project manager or the producer.
Yes.
And from there, I remember we were billing, or they were billing about 300K a year. You know, we're young. I mean, I'm like 26, 27 years old.
Yes.
And I walk in and I'm just like, cool, we need to do more of this. And I remember our first shoots that we were doing, you know, for Bongo Muffin. I don't know if you remember these names.
Yes.
So Piwe Dana, Squatter Camp.
Yes.
You know, all of these guys. And we started a $6,000 budget, and I'll never forget, we got a $12,000 budget, and I was like, we're rich, you know, kind of thing. Because we're just like moving on with it. But to cut a very long story short, is that's where it happened. I joined 3 of my friends in their business, and I was able to just through talking to people and starting to build some type of network, I was able to treble our turnover. So we went from billing about 300,000 to just under R1 million that year that I joined. And I think they looked at me and said, like, we need to do something with this guy because he's just going to carry on going no matter what. Yeah. And that's been true. I'll just kind of carry on going, doing whatever like I wanted to do in a sense. And they offered me 10% of the business.
Amazing.
And I was like, wow, that's incredible.
Yes.
And then I got that 10%, and then I started the music side of the business, which was Audio Boutique, and I grew that by 100% year on year for the next 5 years.
Which is building studios, and then like
so I built a studio, and then I ended up writing music for the games, right? So we were making a little bit of money there, and
were they making games that time already?
Yeah, we were making games all the way back then using something called Flash. Wow. And Flash was killed by the iPhone. Steve Jobs single-handedly wiped out an entire code base, an entire company, an entire system just through the iPhone, because you could hack the front end, and he didn't dig it. He didn't dig it.
Serious.
And he was right in many ways. Wow. So how's that?
That's crazy.
So we were building it in this thing called Flash, and so you know, we're doing all the music for the games, and then I go onto a set one day where Ross is shooting the stills for a commercial. Yeah. And I speak to this lady called Barbara Clark, and I'll never forget it. I say to her, listen, like, how does the music work? You know, like, how does that work? I have no idea what I'm talking about doing, you know? And she says to me, no, we're going to use library music. And I go, library music? That's like stock footage, but stock music.
Yes.
Like, while I'm speaking to her, and I said to her, oh, okay, cool. Like, I know what she's talking about. And I said to her, well, how about I write the music and you give me the fee for that, right? Yeah. And she says to me, no, I got a better idea. Write it, and if we like it, we'll pay you the license for it. And I was like, okay. Wrote the music, they loved it, and that was literally my first job. Okay.
Crazy,
and then we did an amazing commercial with a guy called Paul Strapini and a guy called Ardell at JWT for the Ford Everest with this little teddy bear.
Yes.
And we didn't even have enough money for a singer to be on it and all of that. And I just sang on it. I did it with my best friend at the time, Fabian Singh, who worked at Audio Boutique with me. And this thing gets picked up, not just the music, but the advert, and it gets sold to Ford Canada and Ford US. And we charged 400% on a usage rate, because that's how it works.
And you still own the master, or do you actually sell the master?
So you actually sell the mechanical rights to the master.
Wow. Okay.
To them for a period of time, and they used it for 2 years.
It's a license.
It's a license.
Wow,
yes.
That's cool, man.
So we sold that, and I was like basically off to the races. You know.
Yeah.
So you can see how it just kind of
incredible,
like kind of rolls up into something else.
Yes.
And if you're hungry and pay attention and have passion for it,
absolutely,
I think you can turn it into you know, a job.
100%.
But that was the start.
That's beautiful, man.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And did you guys do Boot Fighter as well?
So no, that was a guy called Louis Dupassani and Gordon Laws.
Okay.
we helped very, very little on it. There was an opportunity for us to basically buy the IP.
Got you.
That's where we got involved.
Okay.
They went through a little bit of ups and downs and so on, and they came to us and said, you know, can we do this?
You were busy with it.
We were busy with it. Yeah, at that point. But Louis Dupassani was, and Gordon Laws were the brainchild of that. Good friends as well.
Okay. And what is the structure like now in INJOZI? Are you still 10% sort of holder, or what?
So in INJOZI right now, so in INJOZI currently is myself, a guy called Craig Wells, the guy that started INJOZI with Ross Garrett. And so he's still my business partner after 16, maybe 17 years.
Beautiful,
which is amazing.
I love stories like that.
Yeah. And
so
he's
special.
I can only praise him. He's just incredible on every level. Like people go, is that Craig Wells? I never thought he'd be like that. I'm like, because he's humble. And he's a great human being, you know?
Wow.
So it's me, him, and we've created an ESOP structure, and I want to bring like young talent into it and eventually have a lot of my top management and so on actually own portion of that company.
Yes.
Because when you're young, you think that owning 100% is everything.
Yeah.
But if you own 100% of something that has no value, it's worth zero, nothing. You know, so that kind of greed or whatever you have as a youngster or inexperience has left me, in time.
Beautiful.
So, but I'm still the majority shareholder there, but plan on bringing on, Tato, for instance, he's our lead developer and so on. Incredible talent, very, very smart guy. And then Michael and Porfu, guys like that. And then in Audio Militia, myself, Paul and Craig are equal shareholders, and we also have an ESOP there for basically our EP, who's Catherine Grenfell. So she's basically director in the business, and another guy called Garrick Wilson. He was in Deader Than Disco. So he's also grown like really nicely within the business and so on. And then GotBot's GotBot's cap table's nuts. You know, it's me, Paul, Craig, and other Craig. So my other business partners, because we basically funded GotBot in the beginning and put the cash in.
I'd love to chat about GotBot. Take me to the beginning. How does that happen? Because AI is something that's now, and bots and AI is like, it's part of pop culture right now, right? So like everybody's talking to. The first time you sat me down to explain to me, this is before any of that sort of wave had happened. There was no conversations of ChatGPT. You sat me down to show me this thing, and I was like, holy moly, this is confusing, but fucking brilliant, And this is like years ago, So I'd love to maybe just take me to the beginning. How does the idea stem? Who comes up with it? How does that whole GotBot come together?
Again, INJOZI are mavericks. They are incredible. Like I describe those guys as basically the Alexander McQueen of digital. They're punk rock, but they slick and they understand what they do and they craft beautifully and all of that. So basically what ends up happening is a friend of mine by the name of Dane Levenrad is running a company called The Grind in Melrose Arch, and he's selling coffee, right? Then everyone is messaging him because it's a business park basically around it with retail at the bottom, and saying, hey bro, can I get my coffee latte, and can I get this coffee, and can I get that?
I'll come pick it up, or can you drop it, or
that's it. But it's being SMS'd or WhatsApped or done through Facebook Messenger. And his phone is now with his barista all day. But it's his phone.
Crazy.
So he's like, dude, like, I can't handle this. Can we do something? Can we find a route around this? So what we actually do, and the way that GotBot starts, because it's like GotBot, get it good, kind of, that was like the payoff line, so that you could just buy coffee through text. So we built an entire ordering system with a pause and all of that, so that we can leverage natural language processing. Basically what bots are now, they more use like LLMs, which are large language models to do this now. But back then it was all through NLP and decision trees.
Yes.
And we create a system where you can order your coffee simply by saying, I want almond milk. And just like you would type it to your girlfriend or anyone that you want to like type something to and order to. And it converts it into an order, sends you an invoice. You can pay for it, all of that just through Messenger. And that's how it starts. Then, and this is in 2016,
That's crazy.
We start building this. And by 2017, we realize, and this is the INJOZI team and a guy called Chris Green, we realized that because now we've met with Burger King, Steers, Wimpy, Nando's, all of these guys. And I've gone and spent probably about 2.5 million rand on this thing, my own cash, like putting it in. And sadly, I realized that to get it into any of these companies is going to almost be impossible, because at that time, and maybe even now, they don't even have Wi-Fi set up at their restaurants. Crazy. And I meet with famous brands and they basically explain it to me like this. They're like, we've got 2,800 stores, Nick. For me to roll out Wi-Fi, for this thing to work, is going to cost, imagine doing a store a day.
Yeah. And imagine just a 20 meg line across it's a ridiculous.
And these are things you don't think about.
Yes.
And then people start seeing what we do, and we get invited to Facebook's bot bashes. So we're teaching people how to make bots.
Just before we go there, Nick, I'm trying to understand something. It's like, there's one thing to build something that's like you feel is a common problem, but to go build it around like a mate's coffee shop. So that's where it starts. His problem. Not something that feels like everybody's problem. I love that.
But we figure, right? Yes. And just share my insane logic at that point, is I go, well, have you heard people's coffee orders? Yeah. They're insane. So it's like, if I can decipher your coffee order, I could sell you that hoodie in 3 sizes and 3 colors, right? Yeah. It's much easier selling that. Yeah. So our whole angle is actual social commerce.
Okay, amazing.
That's the play. Okay. But in the end, what ends up happening is clients come to us and say, can it do this? Can it do this? Can it do that? And we go, damn it. It took us 6 months to build this thing.
Yes.
What happens if we build a framework to build bots quicker?
Wow.
And that's what GotBot becomes. Wow. It becomes a framework for you to deploy bots onto whatever service you want.
Got you.
And now it's used by like guys like Momentum and Toyota and Lexus and the United States Development Fund, RCS, Experian, like these massive businesses. And some of them have multiple bots running. At Momentum, we must have 9 bots kind of running.
Crazy. I cut you off, man. You were saying you basically went from, so post the Nando's and all these people. Yes. Where were you?
And then realizing that to get that out and get it into market is going to be so difficult and cost us so much money, and we haven't made a cent. And in the end, we build a framework and we go to Toyota, basically, who are our first clients ever and are still our clients today.
Incredible.
And we sell and it doesn't even have a front end, but
crazy.
It doesn't have a front end, but they can see it. I'm like typing into it and they can see it works and they're like, wow, this is amazing, because they had massive issues. They got like 1 million people on their Facebook page and they've got like 3 social media managers kind of thing. And they just couldn't keep up.
Wow.
So the bot just helped. And it was a lot to do with like things that don't truly add value to the business, right? So someone asking, do you have a job for me, or can I be placed somewhere? Yeah, in the end it might, help. But it doesn't help the social media manager, because it's just like clogging up the queue, right? And they have to get to everyone.
100%.
So we just start automating all of that.
The same guy is asking for the job is one day going to potentially drive it to you.
Yes.
Like you just want to be, as a brand, especially that size, you just want to be on top of all those little things and not be, because it's like how people engage with your brand at the end of the day leaves like a long last impression, right? So
massive.
To switch that, shout out to Toyota, which is a lot of companies didn't, but they did, and to take that risk. So that's your first client you land?
Yes.
So you must now be going,
and they'll probably be the first client to start using an LLM. as well. So, kudos to them because they saw the opportunities and they've gone for it and it's helped their business. And, I love guys that kind of push the boundaries on things. And we were very lucky with some of these clients.
Incredible. It's like a licensing that they take and then.
Yeah. So basically we've built the platform, and then often to get a bot to actually be useful, you need to connect it to some type of knowledge base, some type of endpoint API,
Got you.
CMS, whatever it is, ERP system, CRM, whatever it is, right? And we can then gather information from there and send it back. So I'll give you another example of where it's worked super, super well. So RCS, they give people lines of credit, basically, a credit card. But people phone into the call center to find out, what's my interest rate? How much do I owe? Where can I spend? All of that type of stuff. So there were about 5 questions that clog up 60% of the call center volume.
Jeez, that's crazy.
And they then have to get your name, type it in, go in and check, and then tell you. So that used to take them about 6 minutes to do that. And by automating it and getting information into their system, we can now respond to the person in about 43 seconds. 24/7.
I mean, that can make a huge difference in your bottom line. That's like a big thing to change, and it can make a big shift in your company. That's amazing. And so landing Toyota, I'm sure it's a big FU to other meetings where you're walking like, listen, Toyota's our client.
Yes.
Whether you sign
So I mean, what ended up happening is we signed Toyota, and then we signed a company called CompuScan, which has basically been bought by Experian, who are now our clients.
Yes.
But I'm sitting at TBWA. I'm chatting to this dude I've never met called Matt Brown. And he asked me what I do. And he said, I'm going to put you in contact with this accelerator. And I'm like, what the hell's an accelerator? I've never heard that word. And they put me in contact with, this guy, Zachariah George, calls me, who's now an investor in 2 of my businesses, actually. And he calls me and he says, Nick, can you come to PwC to do this thing? And I heard you got a great product and all this stuff. And I'm like, bro, I don't know you. And I'm busy. I've got like 5 meetings that day. So he says, dude, it's going to change your life.
Wow.
So I'm like, okay, whatever. So he tells me you have to pitch in 3 minutes. I'm like, geez, I built this whole system, pitch in 3 minutes. Yes. So I'm like, okay, cool. So I get Paul and Craig, my business partners, to film me while I prepare for this thing. And I walk into PwC with a hat, no shoes, or no socks and shoes, because I'll tell you why I say that. Because afterwards, this chick from PwC comes up to me. She's like, geez, I couldn't take you seriously when you walked in. It's like, you're not even wearing socks. And you're wearing a hat, like a fedora kind of thing. She's like, what are you doing? Kind of thing. And she's like, but you pitched really well, So I walk in and I don't know what this thing is, but it's Startup Bootcamp. It's the biggest accelerator out of Europe. So you've got like Y Combinator and Techstars and all of that stuff out of the US. And this is the biggest one out of Europe, and it's come to South Africa or to Africa for the first time. And these 2 American guys are running it.
Okay.
So I'm like, okay. So I get there, I do the 3-minute pitch, and they come to me afterwards and they're like, wow, you're the only guy to pitch a product, because I did the full demo. It worked, all of this, and they love it.
Wow.
And then I realize, oh, these guys are looking for the top startups, and they went to 43 countries. Okay.
Genius.
And then we make it to the top 50, and they fill this out. So I'm like doing all this, thinking like, whatever, I didn't really know what was going on. And then they're like, oh, you're in the top 20. You have to fly to Cape Town. So I'm like, okay, cool. Let me go do this. So I fly down to Cape Town, and then I realize I'm sitting there with guys from France, from Israel, from Uganda, from Nigeria, like all over. And they've all got these businesses in Africa.
Wow.
And I realized that we're one of the top 20. And when I start looking at what these businesses do, I'm like, wow, this is actually impressive.
This is legit.
So then my competitive side kind of comes out, and I'm like, I'm going to win this thing, So I'm like, okay, let's do this. So it's a 3-day thing where they run you through everything, and then you pitch. But you pitch to RCS, BNP Paribas, to Nedbank, to Woolworths, and PwC. Those are the sponsors.
Wow.
I mean, those are big names, right? So walk in, do it, and we're the first company signed to the very first cohort in Africa. And we basically come out as one of the top 10 startups on the continent. Through that, they give us money and we kind of start our journey. And from there, we did plug and play. We did SW7, level up. Like we went into multiple like accelerator kind of programs. We got flown to Paris by BNP Paribas. First time anyone's paid for a trip for me, Incredible. I'm going to Paris, and that was like mind-blowing. Like
amazing.
Going to the biggest tech conference for 4 days, and you're working your ass off because you just got this tiny little stand showing everyone. Incredible. And you're pitching for like 10 hours, just everyone, hey, what do you do? What do you do? And you're showing them, and then experiencing that, and then going to the Louvre and just seeing like a flying car and robots, and then going to the Louvre and seeing sculpture and you just realize how absolutely incredible humans are.
Yeah,
it was one of the most profound moments of my life.
Really, yeah.
Just being like, humans are insane, because you're looking at a flying car and thinking, how are they doing that? And then you go to the Louvre and you look at some of these sculptures and you're like, how did they do that?
Yeah.
And it's thousands of years old.
Yeah.
So people are amazing.
Crazy, remarkable, eh?
Absolutely remarkable.
What are some of the sort of projects that really stand out for you in your journey with INJOZI? So INJOZI, we've had some really weird and wild stuff. I'll take you through some of them, just like the kind of highlights reel. Is it cool if I skip and jump between them? Feel free to.
So I think one of the most interesting ones within INJOZI is one thing that we've done recently, where we've worked with the United States Development Fund to create a learning management system. Yes. But we pitched on this against like some American companies, and it always fascinates me at what people think Africa is and how it works, right? So they came back and they'd all pitched apps and all of this stuff, but we had pitched an LMS that works as a PWA, a progressive web app, right? Yes. So you just go into a URL and you can go from there. But the trick is that we connected GotBot to that platform. So you can go in and answer a whole bunch of questions, and it buckets you into an idea, a startup, or an accelerator. So it's got some business rules. Then it buckets you, and then it gives you the course that you should be doing. So let's just say you're in a startup course, right? It delivers that course. And as you read and get through the course, we track you. Let's say you don't have your laptop and you leave. Okay. You can go into the WhatsApp version and it will know exactly where you've left off. And I can continue my course on WhatsApp. We deliver all your content through PDFs and video and all of that type of stuff. So you learn.
Yes. Very clever.
And then once that's done, then you do a test. And if you score 80% on it, we then send that mark to United States Development Fund, and they deploy the cash to the entrepreneur, the grantee.
Crazy.
And they can then give them money to start their business. Crazy. But the whole idea was like, teach a man to fish. Don't give him a fish.
Yes.
So we're trying to give people money, but in doing that, also teach them so they can actually be successful. In doing that. Then I'll give you two quite interesting ones. We did something called Datsun Twitter Tug of War, which we did for Datsun. This chick got online and like lambasted her boyfriend on Twitter, on X, going like, how dare he buy me this car, this little piece of scrap, blah, blah, blah. And Twitter exploded. Then the agency TBWA come to us and they go, guys, look at what's happened. Can we build a game based off of this? Because people just went nuts. So she said the car's bad. We're not going to give the car away for free. Okay. Wow. Yeah. So what we do is we build a listening tool, and then we build a microsite, and we plonk this little Datsun on this map randomly in South Africa. Then you get onto Twitter, onto X, and you go #go Limpopo, #go Gauteng, and that car gets moved via the listening tool on all the hashtags that are coming out.
Depending on the engagement.
And scale of, is it going to go to Western Cape or Gauteng? So this car is getting tug of war, right?
Yes.
Eventually it ends up in Gauteng, for instance. Then it's hashtag go Sasolburg, hashtag go Pretoria, hashtag go Joburg. So now it's city against city, town against town, and everyone's tweeting to pull this car to their city. Once it gets into the city, suburb against suburb, and then all the way to street against street, number against number.
Crazy.
And someone literally pulled that car to their house.
Wow.
Through Twitter.
Wow.
Okay.
That's genius.
And we averaged for a month 12,000 tweets a day.
Crazy.
For Datsun.
That's madness.
It did so incredibly well. It did so well that we did it a second time.
Wow.
And they put the universities against each other and they pulled it to their dormitory.
Crazy.
So
crazy. I love
a dormitory like one.
Yeah, an idea like that is the type of thing that like an agency comes up with, and then no one knows how to actually bring it to life, and then completely falls on its face. But then you guys come in and you can actually build something that can actually do that.
So it's been very interesting. So like we wanted to reposition INJOZI, and I had thought of this word like technology wranglers, and then I thought no one's going to know what that means. And now we've just dubbed ourselves a technology studio because we really do feel like that. So that was super interesting. Then with the AI and GotBot and Audio Militia, I mean, I think you saw it, but the thing that we did with Ricky Rick, that campaign Stronger. So, I mean, people should know, but, Ricky Rick, prolific, an insane artist, like just beautiful person, very talented, but doesn't win the war with depression, basically, and ends up taking his own life very, very sadly. And in saying that, he's a father, he's a brother, he's a son, a multi-dimensional person, right? So it's taken quite badly by everyone. A girl by the name of Michaela goes and reads his tweets and his Instagram posts, and she's like, he was telling us he wasn't okay the whole time, but no one really read into it, hindsight's 20/20 vision, right? So she comes to us and she goes, guys, could we take all his tweets and Instagram posts and build a song out of it?
Yes.
But then can we get him to rap it?
Yes.
And sing it? And I'm like, okay, well, we've done text to text, done text to speech. Okay. Like, how are we going to pull this thing off? So we end up going and taking all of his, going to his brother Temba and his wife Bianca and saying to him, give us everything you have from his voice, any interviews, any podcasts, in his entire back catalog. We needed all try, no wet signal, all of that, because now we needed to build a model. We sit in studio. I call a very good friend of mine in Lebo Machudi, super talented guy, was in Voodoo Child. And we sit in studio and I say to him, dude, we need to do this. Ricky's passed away and we want to recreate his voice really and sing his own tweets, in a song. And he's like so blown away by the idea because so simple and beautiful at the same time, which is probably one of the hardest things to achieve. But we send him everything. He knows Ricky's work and he walks in and we basically piece everything together. His friends from Ganja Beats write a little like 15 or 30 second loop that I take and then kind of mold into like a track, verse, chorus, bridge, intro, outro kind of thing. And we piece this whole thing together and Lebo walks in and basically impersonates Ricky. Like from his cadence, the timbre of his voice, all of that. Yes. And he's just walking around like he's Ricky, like the whole day. It's like watching Dustin Hoffman, like a method actor doing their stuff. And we put this whole thing down. We have a company in Europe that basically now creates this model of Ricky's voice. And Lebo then sings the entire song. And then we take the model of Ricky's voice that's been created and we layer it over Lebo. And eventually we just sap Lebo out of it. And all you're left with is Ricky. And in the end, they create a foundation for Ricky because, again, beautiful mind, right? He's all about this thing called artivism, which is activism for artists, and helping youngsters like gain traction in music and the arts and anything to do with performance, really. Yeah. And TBWA with Louise, his mom, and Bianca, they create the Ricky Rick Foundation, and we basically seed all the IP to that, because how do you bring someone's voice to life that hasn't given you permission to do it, but he's deceased as well? So they have to create a trust. We seed everything there, and that trust, that foundation, basically writes a letter to say that everything is held by this trust, all the IP. So from an Audio Militia perspective, we assign everything, all our work to that. So does TBWA, which is just an incredible thing to do for an incredible person, right? And this thing gets released, and shame, the family was, man, they had to grapple with so many things. It was some of the toughest meetings I've ever been in, because you're playing this thing and you're sitting there and you're like, it's someone you knew, and but it's not your son, it's not your husband, it's not your brother, and you now hearing him sing back to you in words he's never said. He's only written them. It's quite painful, and it's all of these tweets that show kind of like where he's going. I mean, the title is stronger because the last tweet he sends out, he says, "I'll return a stronger man. This land is still my home." And they decide to kind of like use that as the title for it. But to anyone that's like watching this or listening, like go and check it out. Like we're super proud. It did incredibly well. We won, best use of technology at the Lurie's. We won at DNAD. We won a silver at Cannes, which is just like huge, and couldn't be for a better cause or a nicer guy, and a lovely family as well. So like, that was definitely a kind of project for the books.
I mean, again, these days you can go onto a site, say Drake vocals, and then all of a sudden you can just pull it there and someone can write it. But I didn't know you guys went that deep to put that together. That's insane,
there were points where Temba would say to me, "Dude, my brother doesn't say, courage like that." It's almost like not courage, but he'd go. That guy knew exactly where to find that stuff. Or aisle. And he'd go, "Dude, we need to do that." And we call level back in, and we redid those. So we crafted it like super well, to the point that Temba and Bianca in particular were like, "Guys, this is great. It sounds great."
Amazing.
And another like lovely thing just to talk about with that project is we didn't add an if, an and, a but. These are only his words. That was my mission personally, is to play complete homage to the guy and not add anything.
Got you.
And then on top of that, the choir is his choir. Wow. We didn't just get random people to come in and sing. We got his guys to come in.
Amazing.
So it's like, it was all done for him, and that at the end, I just wanted to look at him and go like, would he be proud to have put this out? And I think he would have. So that was definitely a crazy one.
Crazy, man.
Yeah.
And where do you go from here, bro? What is the sort of next chapter in, all these businesses that you are involved in? Like, where do you see the sort of next evolution coming in? Because you are predominantly service-based.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. Service and licensing based.
100%. Okay.
Yeah. So, We've started another project now called Survisor, which is a B2C, which none of the businesses
That's what I meant. Yes.
A B2C kind of play. So going into that and seeing kind of where we can take that
to go
B2C.
Got you.
So basically, what's happened there, not to nerd out, but the South African car market has been changed, I think, forever through something called right to repair.
Yeah.
So that means if you drive a Beamer, you don't have to take it to BM anymore to keep its warranty.
Wow.
Okay. You can take it to any registered RMI dealership Okay, so they're vetted right, and you will keep your warranty as long as it's completed by a qualified person.
Got you.
Okay, so what we've done is basically built a platform. It's like a Hippo for car servicing.
Wow.
So you can go in and say, I drive a Beamer, and BMW will quote on it, and so will Bosch, and so will AA, and all of that. Whoever is qualified to do that car, and they can basically all bid on it. And you can go, well, they're closest. They've got the second best price. I don't want to go for the cheapest, but I'll go for the second best price. And I get to choose to take my car there and still keep my warranty.
Got you.
So that's what we're building there.
Clever. Very clever.
Yeah, it's a lovely idea.
And just going to create so much more business for the smaller guys, smaller businesses in the sector. And so I think that's brilliant just to formalize that.
And I mean, if you look at it, a lot of the dealerships actually struggle to get people in because they're unknown. So even if it is a Beamer, right? And you want to take it to BMW, you could have just moved into an area, use the platform. You're like, oh, BMW is down the road. I feel much better taking it there. So take it there, no problem. And you can book it all through the platform, you know, which is great, and pay for it and all of that type of stuff. And then I started a venture capital business with my brother, cousin, and a very good friend by the name of Yusuf, and it's called Venteri Capital.
Yes.
And it's been going for about 2 years. We've made 11 odd investments.
Incredible.
But I think the coolest thing about that was, remember I was telling you Startup Bootcamp earlier about GotBot went through it. We actually ended up becoming the LP behind it, you know, the funders of this kind of 7th cohort. So I was like I mean, you know how I am. Me and you share a passion for not only our country, our continent. So I was super stoked that we would fund 10 businesses on the continent as our very first deployment of money. So, and like I went through the first one, you know, and 7 years later, you know, we're funding this next one, and like some incredible ideas in that as well. Amazing. There are guys that have basically set up cold storage using solar. So imagine farmers in like super rural areas. I mean, if you've traveled the continent, you'll know that, you know, there's actually not such a fantastic supply of electricity. There are very few networks, anything like that. So these guys are setting up these containers, right? And it's all cold storage, all powered by the sun. So farmers all locally come in and they basically buy a box or per square meter, and they rent it out to keep their potatoes or, you know, whatever they're growing, right? In that, which is awesome. A lot of kind of medical innovation through the continent, where guys are coming up with ideas to not only be able to book a doctor and go to a hospital, but what they can do is also have a virtual meeting with a doctor. You've got a sick child and you can't get to a hospital. So now how do you engage with someone? You know, when you read like some of the statistics, like in Nigeria, how many children die from something as silly as diarrhea per year?
Crazy.
You will fall over. It's hundreds of thousands of children. Now, if a mom could just get on to her phone and speak to a doctor, and he would tell you, listen, just go and do X, Y, and Z, and you could save someone's life, you know, that's an amazing thing.
100%.
So a lot of it's in education, medical, solar, and kind of there's one that does like handyman services and things like that, like a go-to guy, you know. I'm looking for a painter in my area, and then they'll deploy the guy that's vetted and all of that,
Service
you know.
Titan,
Exactly. That's it.
I'm jumping between your companies.
No,
I apologize. Tell me the studios at the moment. What are they? What sort of work would you say you're predominantly doing? And I see a lot of movie stuff. The last time was there, a lot of Disney stuff.
Yes, that's it.
What are the studios doing? And how many studios at the moment?
So there are there's six. So we downscaled a little bit during COVID, but we're building the 7th now.
Okay.
So to explain what that does is the guys compose a lot of music for commercials.
Gotcha.
That's a big thing. Then we also compose music for series and TV and even movies and things like that as well, like all the scores and things like that. Then Kath concentrates on the sync. If you want an artist on something like, I've worked with Questa or DJ Mapurisa or Moonchild, Non-Kupiri, anyone like that, she'll bring in, and sync the sync deal for them. Then we do tons of like ADR, which is like dialogue replacement. So we'll have a call with guys in LA, like we just did the Beast movie, for instance, with Idris Elba. And what's that? Sholto Coakley. He was in our studios recently doing ADR and all of that, which is quite interesting. And then we also do something called Atmos.
Okay.
So you see on your phone now, you've got like lossless and Atmos and all of this. So we've got a 7.4.1 mix studio. So you can do that for bands, right? And for movies and anything else. So it's a very specific, actually need to be certified to do it. And so it's a very weird but amazing experience. I watch the guys mixing it and creating all of it, and I walk in and I'm just like, this is awesome. I'm loving it.
No, it's special.
There's speakers on the roof, all of that type of stuff. And then every now and then, we'll work with bands and so on that we really love. We did the last two Hellcats albums, both went for SAMA nominations. We don't do that much anymore. I know Sims Kulu, who's with us from the Muffins, he's putting out his new album. Everything's been done at the studios. I mean, Richard Staub had a band with, I can't remember the vocalist from City Ball Miser's name, but they had a band called Wee Dealer. They did that there. Conqueror did their album. Pestroy, Newtown KNIFE Gang, 16 Stitch. So all our own kind of bands, selfishly would go there and be able to record, So the Hellcat stuff we really enjoyed as well. It was a simple setup, right? It's a drummer that sings and a wild guitarist, Warwick, So and they just gun it. I love it.
And sound design stuff and just doing a lot of
tons of sound design and Foley and all of that stuff for the movies. We've got an interesting approach, right? Because we've got a fairly big team. So when you're doing a movie, for instance, we've got one guy just doing like footsteps throughout the whole movie, so you don't miss a beat, right? Wow. So, and then another guy doing gestures, things like any like movement, scuffles. Then you've got guys doing all the, and when I say gestures, it could be hits or, getting punched or things like that. Then you got the guys that are mixing the voice. Then you got the guys doing like any other type of sound effect, being explosions, things like that. You got a couple of guys writing music, and that all then gets delivered to one guy that then mixes all of it, the whole thing, so it all gets tabled up to one dude, and then he'll go and mix the whole thing.
That's the best job.
Yeah.
That's the most fun.
I think it's stressful as well because you're trying to like obviously maintain a set standard throughout everything. But if you've got a solid team, your work's a lot easier.
Johnny. I need more footsteps there. Scene 3, too loud, my man. Bring it back.
That's exactly it.
It's amazing.
It's just tough when dudes make lots of like changes to the edit, because you want to try and work off of locked off edits. Because you can imagine now, like they've taken 3 frames out here, and now everything from here backwards is out by 3 frames. Oh. So,
man, that sounds stressful.
Yeah. And then they're like, no, it's a small change. But you're like, no, the music's tweaked. And So it can get like quite intense, And then also like, we've done things like stuff for Nickelodeon or Turner, where we did something called Moosebox.
Yes.
Which was the first ideated, written, animated, sound design, mixed, the entire thing was made in South Africa and launched worldwide. Amazing. And that's Dave from the Kiffness, his brother, Mike Scott, he did that. And what a mind.
Really, eh?
Beautiful mind. He's talented, so funny. He's very talented, very talented. So we did that. And then we did DuckTales for for Disney, you know, we've done work for Audible, we've done work for Apple. So we're a tier 1 provider to these guys. But with that comes a lot of other stresses, you know.
I'm sure.
You need, you know, a certain camera system. You need a certain size safe.
Yeah.
You need to work off of, I mean, we've got USBs that have key codes in them.
Oh, wow.
Have you ever seen that before?
No,
you know?
I haven't.
Like, that's how we work, you know, like you got to key code this thing, put it in.
I guess the content is very, very.
Yeah. We have to disconnect our studios from any you know, can't be connected to servers or anything like that, you know. Once the project's finished, like I remember we're working on a project with one of these like big guys, and the guys are cool. As soon as it's done, because they even could take you through cyber resilience training.
Really,
they're very hectic, Jeez. So they take you through cyber resilience training, and then when you get to the end of the project, the guy's like, cool, once it's done, delete it the next day. And I'm like, do you really want to do that?
Crazy.
Should we not just leave it for 3 days in case there's a change? And he goes, oh yeah, maybe that's a good idea. You know, because they just want to get rid of it so quickly.
Crazy.
You know? So
no wonder these rappers' music gets leaked, man.
Yeah, dude.
Kanye West is a Popeye. He uses the same hard drive as me, man. He's got that orange lacy one like me. No wonder they get leaked.
Dude.
No pin codes there.
Yeah.
That's incredible, bro. Lastly, bro, is there anything you would like to leave people with, especially, you know, I know 2 paths are the same.
Yeah.
You know, but I don't doubt there is so many different aspects and things that you do that, you know, someone could grab and hold on to something you lead them with. Whether it's, I want to start a new tech business, you know, we can maybe start and categorize them if you prefer. Maybe you have a different message for them. But, you know, if someone's sitting at home listening and they have an idea that they want to bring to life, maybe it's a tech startup, you know, you've got a lot of experience in that world now, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
Whether it's just bringing a general idea to life, whether it's entrepreneurship, you know, I think you play in a very, as much as you do a lot of things, you play in a very specific role, because at the end of the day, you're the guy who brings the idea to life, you know?
Yes, absolutely.
So, anything from your side, bro?
I mean, if I was to say to someone, and I look at the journey, right?
Yeah.
Like, when you ideate something, so I'm probably going to give a couple of
go crazy.
like hopefully pearls of wisdom and things that I've learned. So when you start, I think what you've got to do is what people get trapped in, and I did as well, is you get drunk off your own Kool-Aid, or as I say, high off your own supply. Be very, very careful to do that. Because you think it's a great idea doesn't mean that the market's going to think it's a great idea.
Yeah.
The market will always dictate, because very few of us are Steve Jobs. Okay. So be very careful to not get high off your own supply.
Gotcha.
Okay. That's one. Then test all of your assumptions. If you think this is a great idea, go and tell people, talk to them, ask them for advice, and then create a little scorecard that you can go out and go, if this is such a great idea, let me validate it. Okay. So I think that's really important to do. Then I think when you start moving, through the ideas, don't be worried that if you change your idea that it's going to fail. It's more likely to fail if you steer the course. Right? So you hear this word pivot.
Yeah.
Don't be scared to move and pivot your idea as you navigate everything. I also think that entrepreneurs or anyone with an idea really has to have a shitload of grit. Everyone's going to tell you, the market's going to tell you, everyone's going to tell you this is a shit idea, it's going to fail, it's this, it's that. Vet it, do everything you can, but stick to your guns. Be agile, change, but stick to your guns. Be driven, continue forward.
Yes.
It's the only way. These studies have come out and everyone talks about, what creates a successful entrepreneur. And this lady did, I think, a 20-year study, and she boiled it down to one word: grit. And I think that must become a super talent of yours. Stick to it, stick to your guns, carry on going forward. Another thing I think that served me very well is mentorship. Go out there and find someone, something to bounce your ideas off of, and get someone that's really honest with you as well. Create a group of like-minded individuals, and it's simple. Create a masterminds group, and you can just talk about my personal high, personal low, business high, business low, and you will be dumbfounded by the advice and what comes out of those sessions. Because I think being an entrepreneur in South Africa in particular is quite lonely.
Yeah.
And we're starting to get, these forums where people are helping each other more. But I think it's a very lonely thing. And my business coach, probably 77 years old, that guy's been in business longer than I've been alive.
Crazy.
So can you imagine what he can give me in terms of insights?
Yes.
And then the reality of business as well is understand the life cycle of a business, because you can shoot the lights out, right? So as you start a business, it can be the inception of idea, and that there's a fall off, right? And the business goes and dies. And you guys go and look at it on Google, and you'll see how it works. But understand the business life cycle, because then you will know what's coming. In other words, me and you can have an idea, right?
Yeah.
And it can just be an idea, and then it becomes like an infant mortality.
Yeah.
That's what they call it. It falls off. Then, in year 2, it's like adolescence. You're not getting there, and cash flow kills you, and all of these types of things. Normally within the first 2 years, cash flow is the killer,
Yes.
Then you reach something called go-go. And that's where you've like survived the first, couple of years, and our work's starting to come. And what kills you there is the founder's trap. So I think that all the decisions must be funneled through me, because no one can do that job better than me.
Gotcha.
Surround yourself with a team that will help you piece it together. And I have realized that sometimes just get the fuck out of the way and let your team do their thing. Because you should get people in the room that are better than you.
Yeah.
I have the best designers, the best devs. I can't do their job.
Yeah.
I need them and they need me, So you've got to build that unit around you, and you've got to then give them the opportunity to delegate and run their own system, and teach them and guide them. But delegate, get stuff off your plate. Elon Musk's has this idea about parallel tasking. So he talks about it like you walk down a corridor and you roll this ball, roll this ball, roll this ball, roll this ball, and they gain momentum, but you're the one pushing it. You're not doing the rolling and so just imagine that's like people, and you're just guiding everyone and pushing them and guiding them along, and they get to carry on, and you get to carry on your mission. So I think put a really, really good team together as well. Keep people accountable as well. We've been taught this thing called 100-0. 100% responsibility, 0 excuses. And I normally go, 0 fucking excuses. When something happens, take accountability, take the responsibility. It's on you. I had a scenario in GotBot probably about 1.5 years ago where I gave myself a warning and I made the board sign it.
Crazy.
And now the one board member, my investor, was like, what are you doing, dude? Like, this wasn't your fault. And I'm like, yes, but no, because if I looked at what happened, right, and there was no one else to blame, the buck's got to stop somewhere. And if I'd removed myself from the company and I was just the shareholder looking at the business and watching the CEO, I would say, dude, I'm giving you a warning. And 100%. That's what I did.
Wow.
So you can't expect to hold people to a standard that you're not willing to hold yourself to.
I love that.
And I often hold myself to a very, very high standard. But in saying that, there's another lesson that probably one of the greatest lessons I've ever learned. And it was from our psychologist, where he said, Nick, you know what your problem is? And I was like, oh, now what did I do? He's like, you expect everyone to be just like you.
Yeah.
He's like, just think about your siblings. You guys come from the same blood, the same DNA, but you're all different. So how can you expect someone that comes from a completely different culture, a completely different family, a completely different blood in them to be like you?
Yeah.
That's not the way it works.
Yeah.
So you've got to like realign,
yes,
with yourself, which is the hardest thing, and then realize no one is like you, and then play to people's strength and build on some of their weaknesses. And I think that another thing is like, be careful how much shade you throw. Nothing really grows in the shade.
Yeah.
I always believe that my job is to create a platform where my team can grow properly. Give them everything that they need. What tools do you need? I need a better laptop. Give them the better laptop. I often make them motivate. Why?
Yeah.
But when the guy's telling me, I can render this and that out 10 times faster, I'm like, great, here's the money, go for it. Give them the tools that they need, give them the guidance that they need, and they'll grow. And then we were given this formula that basically goes, concentrate on your culture. Get your culture right. The culture will bring you the talent. That talent needs to execute diligently. And you put that in brackets. You times that by exceptional customer service, gives you an amazing product. And the byproduct of that amazing product is money.
Give that to me one more time. That's genius, bro.
Yes.
I love that. That is so well put, bro.
So culture, get your culture right, because the culture will bring you the talent. So people will come to you. They'll want to work at that place.
Part of this place.
Think about GotBot or Audio Militia or INJOZI. They're all aspirational places that do good work, and they've got a good name. So that gets out and everyone's like, oh, I want to go there. They're doing cool shit.
Yeah.
So the culture will bring you your talent. The talent needs to execute diligently. So you need to run a tight ship, right? Because diligence is about consistency, hard work, and doing your best.
Yes.
And sometimes what happens is I'll just say to someone, would you put your name on that? No. So then why would you put the company's name on it?
Yeah.
It's the same thing.
Yeah.
So have the pride. So do it with diligence. Okay. Culture, bring you your talent, execute diligently. Put that in brackets. You times that by exceptional customer service. And we normally say to people, we need to deliver wow through service.
Yeah.
That's a lesson from Jeff Bezos. He's obsessed with the client. Listen to them.
Yes.
And that will equal an incredible product. And the byproduct of that is money.
Brilliant.
So I was never driven by money, actually, you know? I don't think you should be. It's like, it's such a...
But it's a construct we live in, It's like at the end of the day, we don't wear pants that have 3 legs. It's a construct that exists. Don't let it be your be all and end all. But, it is also the means to create the best ideas, So, or not to say the best ideas need the most amount of funds, but at the end of the day, to bring these things to life, you need to fund them to bring the right people in and so on and so forth. So I love that. That's super powerful. It's like a nice formula to, it's like, hey, if things are getting confusing, just go to the basics. And just,
back to basics,
I love that, bro.
And then I think like, I'm just going through some of the levels, Then I think, once you've got your team going and you've got a product, always look at the data itself and understand what's actually going on.
Yes.
Because people create the idea, build the team, execute it, and then they think, oh, it's just going to go forever. No. Once it's launched, you need to go into what we refer to as hypercare. And you need to start like looking at what are people actually using? What does the data look like? It will basically inform you in terms of where you go forward and what the market's looking for. And once you've got that right, I think, often then people go and want to raise funding.
Yes.
Which is becoming a bigger and bigger thing in South Africa. And the biggest things I can probably say there is understand your business's mandate. And when you get into a room with, so what does the business want and need, and what are you going to do with the money?
Yes.
Because if the investor's giving you money, you better damn sure know what you're doing with it. Because otherwise they're not going to give it to you.
Yeah.
So understand the mandate from the business. Also understand the mandate from the VC or the investor, what are they looking for?
Yeah.
What's important to them? And once you go through that, pick those people as best as you can, because once someone's on your cap table, it's almost impossible to get them off. So choose wisely, take your time, get people that align with your fundamental beliefs as a business. If you need help, tell them you need help. If you don't need help to run the business, tell them that you don't need help and that you want money, or whatever it is. So figure that out and make sure that when you do that everyone has a very clear understanding of the exit.
Got you.
Some guys I've seen basically build businesses and they become lifestyle businesses, which is great.
Yeah.
I often think that's possibly one of the best things you could do.
Yeah.
But I've also seen people that build a business specifically to exit.
Okay.
The way they've modeled it and built it, that they don't need to be there to run it. And I think for some entrepreneurs, that is like the peak, is to build something, leave it, it's operational, or can be sold off to someone else. But when you're taking someone else's money, you've got to understand, do they want this to give them dividends, or do they want the end goal to be that you sell the business in totality, or they sell their shares? It affects everything.
Gotcha.
Once you bring someone else on. And once you've got that, you start realizing, Keith Jones told me this. He said, Nick, the golden rule? I was like, no, what is the golden rule? He's like, those with the gold rule. So when you take someone else's money, understand that they have a massive part to play in it. So you've just got to, just words of warning, or be cautious, or really understand kind of what you're doing. Because whenever I've taken someone else's money, I truly do treat them and it like gold.
Yes.
Because I have such a responsibility, to it. And in the end, I think what drives a lot of people is that they want to be the masters of their own destiny and so on. But as an entrepreneur, there's the cold hard truth. And the cold hard truth is that in the end, you are responsible for a whole bunch of people. When I look at myself, we're 56 people currently. And I go like, if something happens, if I just think of the children, that of my team members, right? And the spouses and the homes and the cars, everything, you're actually responsible for that.
Yeah.
And people often just look at upside in business. They just go, oh, we're going to shoot the lights out and this is that.
Yeah.
What people don't understand is there's a level, and yes, there is upside, but there's also downside.
Yeah.
Can you handle the downside and can you get yourself through that? So prepare for that. The amount of times I haven't taken a salary or I had to put in cash or whatever it is, it's happened so many times, man. And you've got to have that drive. And again, to that word, grit. Make sure you've got it. You've got the vision and kind of go for it. I think those are some of the major things that I would look at, as you progress. And then eventually when you're someone that's deploying money, I think looking at, businesses through that lens is very interesting. When you get there, because I look at youngsters now and I'm like, oh, they're missing this, that, and I'm like, but just look at the passion. And then you start also realizing that people back the jockey, not the horse.
Wow.
Because a good entrepreneur, can pivot and change and get onto basically another horse and ride that way.
Yes.
So make sure that your team is so solid, because they will back your team, often not the product.
Wow.
It's such a weird concept.
It is crazy.
So I think those are some of the biggest things that I've learned.
I love that, man. Thank you. You've given me Instagram's about to go crazy. So many bites there. So good, bro. So good, man. Thank you. And geez, man, I look forward to everything else you're going to do.
Thanks,
I think coming to your offices, by the way, they're so phenomenal. The new space that you got. I mean, I say new now. It's been a good couple of years, 3 years now. it really feels like a playground. You walk in, you guys have your game studio on one side, you have like the design studios on another side. The actual building has so much character, and just the artworks and just like your collectibles, and it's just like really like I hope I can get some footage to play in the intro, just so people know what I'm talking about. But you know, and just the people, like you always say, like walking in there, seeing the people, it really feels like everybody's excited to get to work. I can't even call it work. It really feels like this like playground for adults, you know? Yeah. But yeah, bro, what you've been doing is phenomenal.
Thanks, George,
it's always such a honor to come and chat with you and just to share the same room as you. From that dinner to now, we have a podcast that's probably going to live forever. And within time, bro, we'll have another one of these, and then we can see what you've gotten up to since then, you know.
George, I'm also super proud of you, man.
Thank you, my brother.
Just watching you go for it and all the ideas and everything that you've achieved, I'm just like, this is amazing. Like, I love that I'm here, you know, watching you grow as well. It's cool. We're going to do it together,
bro. Absolutely. Touch my blood, dude, brother. Thank you so much, my brother. I appreciate it. But that was beautiful, man.
Awesome.
I think people are going to really resonate to that, and you bring like just a whole different angle to the show. I think when I think of the guests,